Aloha, I'm Eva Andrade. I'm the president and CEO of Hawaii Family Forum. And on today's episode of Faith in Politics, I'm going to be sitting on the hot seat as I talk with some millennials about voting, some of them for the very first time. So let's chat about that. We really are excited about today's show. Well, they're probably not, they're excited. I'm freaked out a little bit because I'm going to be sitting here with some passionate millennials who are going to be pounding me with questions about voting in elections. And so if I disappear out of the screen, you'll know that it's because I'm running away from this conversation. Actually, no. This is a conversation that we need to have. I think that we want to reach out to our youth. And when I say youth, please forgive me. I don't mean that you're young and you're in diapers. Just that there are some people on our panel today who are going to be voting for the first time, and they have some questions and some thoughts, and we're going to be digging a little bit into that. So today I am with John, Ali, and Kailani. And so I'm going to let each of them maybe give you a little tidbit about them. We'll start with you, John.
Aloha, my name is John, and I'm 24 years old, and this is going to be my first time voting.
I'm Ali, I'm 19, and this is my first time voting too.
And I'm Kailani, I'm 22, and it's going to be my second time voting.
Okay, so before we jump into because I know you have questions for me, but before we do that, I want to start with a question for you, and this is an easy question, okay?
Right.
I'm curious that in your circles, how are your friends talking about the elections? I mean, what are you hearing from people your age? John, we'll start with you.
It's either nothing or something about our president.
And that something about our president, is it positive or negative?
Usually negative.
Okay.
I usually don't hear anything, but if I do, it's usually just on social media and people just talking about how they're so confused.
And same with her, social media also. Most of the influencers I follow is to vote, and then same with John, just talking trash about president that we have now. So yeah.
So do you, before we jump into your questions, you're going to vote in the election?
Yes, I am.
And you're going to vote in the election, and you're going to vote in the election. Mm-hmm. Do you kind of know where you're leaning at this point?
As of recently, yes, I do.
I think so, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So now I'm in the hot seat. All right. So John, what kind of questions do you have for me? And I want to give a little disclaimer as we get into this. I am by no means have all the answers. So if they ask me something I really don't know, then I promise to look it up and we'll post the information for you. I will do my best. I am not an attorney. I'm just somebody who's done public policy here in the state since 1994. So you guys were born then, right? 94?
Around there.
No, okay, she wasn't born yet, but okay, I've been around. A fun fact for me, when I was 18, my first election, I had the privilege of voting for Ronald Reagan. And I was in the United States Air Force at the time, and I never regretted. I mean, I did at the time because I grew up here in Hawaii, a very democratic state, and that was a Republican vote, and that wasn't, kind of kosher to do. But it's a vote I never regretted. So
awesome.
That's nice. A little fun fact for me. So John, what question do you have for me?
All right. Well, I have a lot, but I have to only ask a few due to time. And the first one's going to be, what are the most important characteristics you look for when voting someone into a position of power?
Okay, that's a very good question. And I know that that's what you're hearing on social media right now, right? A lot of attacks on the character of the current president. And there is even some negative news about the character of the person running against the president. So it is something that's out there in the conversation. So I think as Christians, and everything we're going to talk about today is going to be through the lens of being a Christian. Okay, so if you're not a Christian and you're watching this, then it may not be the foundation that you use. But for us Christians, the very first thing we should be looking for is, what are the characteristics of Jesus?
Yes.
How did Jesus handle some of the things that he handled? I mean, he was constantly, right, being put up by the Pharisees and the Sadducees. They were trying to trick him. The infamous scripture about, should we pay taxes? That wasn't a simple question just to see how he was going to answer. They were literally trying to trick him. And very calmly, he looked at the coin and said, whose picture's on it? We give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and we render unto God what is God's. So, of course, we look to Jesus.
Right.
How did he handle sin? The woman at the well. He spoke about it. He spoke truth. He told her, yes, the man you're living with right now is not your husband. But he didn't judge her to condemnation. He didn't tell her, I don't want to have this conversation with you. What he did was he built relationship.
Right.
He brought her into a place where she would trust him. And a lot of people forget that how that scripture ends is she goes out and tells everybody about this wonderful man she just met.
Right.
So having said that, looking at Jesus as this great character person, we can also look at scriptures, what they tell us to look for. Leaders who are above reproach. You know, that's what the New Testament tells us, right? Ones that are truthful, that don't take bribes, that are strong family members. Okay, so I can throw that out to you, but now you're thinking in your head, well, how does Trump fit into that and how does Biden fit into that? So how, now that I've said that, how do you feel that you can plug that into a choice when you're at the voting booth? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Well, follow up to that would be if you were, let's say you're a kid just watching this and you want to know a good source to find information on the candidates other than, let's say, CNN News or social media where there's just things blasting at you. What's a good source that you'd go to find information on these guys?
Yeah, so the question really is about, is there any biased information or unbiased information?
Right.
And unfortunately, in this day of technology here, it is not very easy to get information that is always unbiased. I mean, everybody has a bias. We have a bias. People watching this show, they know that we're basing everything based on being Christians, right? So no matter what, you're going to find a bias. What I always tell people is to check both sides of the story. When I took debate in high school, they told us to study both sides of the issue. Yeah, we had to pick a side. We were either pro or con, but I had to be able to articulate the other person's side. And I think that that's what we're missing today,
Yes.
because people are getting, right, a lot of their news directly from social media, and that can be very dangerous.
Yes.
Who do you surround yourself with? People
Right.
that believe the same thing you do. So that's why you'll see a lot of things on your wall that tends to be one way. So, and I want to go back to also having Jesus as, you know, our person that we look to. Jesus also got angry. There was a time when he was very upset at what was happening in his father's house, and he overturned the table. So there's a time to be angry. And I
Yes.
know that your generation has a lot of anger towards a lot of different things, and people are going to feel like they have to bring that out into the public square. Our Constitution gives us that right. We have the right to protest. So we may not agree with your reasons for protesting, but you have the right to do so. So I think that kind of goes into that. I'm curious, what do you think about this, Allie? About this whole idea of, you know, we throw out Jesus and these great leaders, and then you've got these two people on your ballot. I mean, how do you get through all of that?
Mostly I just look for whichever one is more on the side of the like Bible seeing, like whoever, I don't know how to say this, whoever just has the more
Maybe a biblical
Same
point.
yeah,
values
I wanted to say Christian, but I didn't know that was allowed to say.
Well, you kind of know, right? I mean, when you're listening to either Trump or Biden speak, when they're talking, there's going to be things resonating with you, you know? And I always know that somebody is trustworthy when they can tell me something good about even the person that they're not going to support. You know, when people say Trump has done absolutely nothing, and so I absolutely have to vote for Biden, then I'm thinking that that is a prejudiced view, because
Right.
everybody does something well, you know, and even for those that didn't vote for President Obama, you know, after he served, they were able to look back and go, as president, he was able to accomplish these good things. So that's something you really want to be able to ask your friends, especially if they're anti all the time. You know, these are all the bad things. Well, that's great, and we can acknowledge that. But tell me, what do you see any positives in this person? Because that's how Jesus would do, right? Jesus would always try to bring out the positive. What about you, my dear?
I think the main thing that I see positive with the president is no abortions and keeping babies alive. And that's a really big value that I have and stand for. It doesn't mean I like everything that he does, but that's a big thing that I believe in, is to keep the babies.
Well, I can put each of you on a hot seat without you having to answer this question, but I mean, your parents, are your parents perfect?
No.
The parents are watching. You wonderful parents. You have done such a great job with your kids. No, but I mean, but that's the point. It's when you're trying to find this person you're going to vote for, you've got to understand that these are human beings.
Right.
There is no human on the face of this earth that is going to be perfect.
Yeah.
So we have to think about the person when they're in that office, what are they going to do? The other good thing that we can talk about too is you can judge a lot about a person by who they hang around with. Who is their inner circle? In the case of the president, who did he pick as his vice president, and
Right.
who did Biden pick as his running mate? You know,
Right.
this tells you a lot. These are the people that are going to be in your inner sanctum, right? These are the people that are going to be giving you advice. So hopefully that's something you can look for too when you're casting your vote. What kind of deep question do you have for me?
Well, since a lot of people my age, or just people I tend to know, don't really know much about any of the debate or politics, I just wanted to know some advice that you would give to first-time voters so that we have like some understanding on how we should handle that.
That's a very good question, and I think it's hard for you. I really do. When I voted, there was a newspaper, and there was an encyclopedia, and, you know, I'd have to go to the library, you know, to
Right.
find things. You guys have everything right here at your fingertips, good and bad.
And then some.
And you're inundated with it, right? So on a first-time voter, what I would say is push back on talking points. Do not let talking points, so in other words, you're talking to someone who supports Biden, and all they say to you is, anybody but Trump, right? It's a talking point. Push back a little bit and say, okay, that's fine, but why are you going to support Biden? What is he going to bring to this great country? So if you have a friend that's saying, well, I think my college education should be paid for, that's a talking point. But ask them, that's great. And we want people to be able to go to college if this is what they want to do, and they should be able to afford it. But who's going to pay for it? Because the professors are still working, right? The professors still need to be paid. There's still rent or mortgage or whatever on the college building. There are still expenses. Where is that money coming from? Because if you're not going to pay for it, who's going to pay? Just, talk, get them out of talking points, because I think talking points are killing us.
Right.
And you'll see that, right, in tweets and all of that. It's
All
just
over
people are
social media.
regurgitating the same thing over and over again. So was that helpful? Okay. And what is your deep question?
I think, why do you think that younger people don't vote at like higher rates than older people do?
That is a very good question. Actually, all of your questions are good. Sorry, I sound like a broken record. That's a great question. It's a good question because it's true. In fact, I was just reading an article in the New York Times that, and I want to be able to quote that correctly. So it was an October 8 article in the New York Times, and it said that fewer than half of Americans 18 to 29 voted in the 2016 presidential election. And they gave 3 reasons for that. Now, I want to throw out their 3 reasons, and then I'd like to get your thoughts on
Awesome.
if you see the same thing. So the first thing they said, the reason was habit formation. So when you're a first-time voter, you're not in the habit of voting, right? So adults who have voted, like me, I've been voting since 1982. Yeah, 82.
Good times.
I've been voting a long time, so I'm in the habit of voting. So they're saying that, your generation's not in the habit of voting. So it's not something that, you're gonna do. The second thing they say, which is interesting, is that your lifestyles, you're working, you're going to school, you've got all these busy things, you've got social stuff you're doing, right? So it's not a priority for you in all the myriad of things that you're having to experience in your life. And the third thing, which I do see, is that your generation is participating in the elections, but it may not be voting. When you see these big protests and a lot of your age group out there, they are participating. In their mind, I'm participating. I'm not voting, but I'm participating. I'm raising my voice against this injustice. And so that's the 3 things that they say are the reason. The 4th thing I want to add in, which is my own impression, is that you learn from your parents. Hawaii is one of the lowest in the nation at voter registration and turnout. So if your parents aren't voting, then you're naturally not going to fall into that.
Right.
So as we're going to cut to a break right now, I want you to be thinking about that, about coming back on that, on how you think that we fall into those 3 or 4 things. Okay? So we'll be right back.
We have a mission here at Kalo TV. We continue to be the only local Christ-centered media outlet in Hawaii. God has planted this station to nourish believers and to harvest souls for eternity. It's a calling we hold dear, and today we need your help. Partner with us as we continue to create original local programs.
We're so very grateful for that whole journey.
Walking down to our story room.
Oh my God.
Showcase solid biblical teaching.
We reach more people in one day with the broadcast of the gospel.
It's music to God's ears.
Improve our infrastructure and influence social media. Are you willing to labor with us for Hawaii, for your ohana, for the next generation? Go to kalotv.com and partner with us today.
We understand that. We understand that slavery was the issue of its day, and killing 1 million babies a year in America, on a country founded on the idea of the right to life, is the issue of our day.
We refuse to call good evil and evil good, and that is exactly what political correctness is. It is allowing a lie to masquerade as truth because we have a greater fear of offending man than offending God.
And I think we have something to learn from a sustainable approach where the schools are open, we're working, and people use individual liberty and personal responsibility to make decisions and not executive orders.
I would start seeing on social media, like just people attacking each other. Like, if you didn't say something, you were attacked. And then when you did say something, you were attacked for saying it wrong.
Because that's the amazing thing about the Constitution of the United States, is it's not a document that was written to only apply to a certain time. It was specifically written to be timeless.
All right, welcome back. So back on the hot seat quickly. So we talked about the New York Times article and the reason that young adults don't vote. And they said the first thing is because they're not in the habit of doing so. The second reason is because their lifestyle, they're busy doing other things, or that they're participating but not necessarily by voting. So let's get your thoughts on that.
So a lot of the time I've heard that sometimes they're just too nervous to like make that statement of who they want to run because they don't really know who to vote for. They haven't heard much. They don't really know who to trust and what information they get. So sometimes it's just like I don't even want to bother because I don't know who's gonna be the best choice to run the country. So I'll just rather not. So I think that's a lot of the time that's the reason. They're just too nervous to make that bold of a statement. I'm like, I want this person to run it.
I think that's a good point.
I think piggybacking off of her, a lot of friends that I have, they're either like one way, they know who it is, nobody can shake them, versus they're just scared. And if you do say who you want, there's a lot of controversy about it and shaming and how could you vote for him, you know he did all this stuff, or vice versa. Like, there's no easy talking. It's not a judge-free zone to just speak with somebody. It's how could you do this, and a bunch of negative things. So I feel like that's another reason why is people are just scared and they don't want to have to answer or fight with anyone. So I think that's another thing too.
That's very good.
And double piggybacking off of them, now it's a double piggyback. There's so many people, especially on social media, where they're just so extreme one way that if you mention one thing, you almost like half your friends list is going to go away overnight. And to add to that, I think as a young man, being ignorant of what the benefits are to voting and what value it places to do that, I think that plays a major effect in why people don't do it, is because we just don't see any benefit to it. We don't know what cost it has or what it's going to do for us.
I think that's a good statement, is that, how does this going to affect me, right? That's kind of what you're thinking when you're making your choice. So what is your next question for me, Allie?
Well, piggybacking off of them too, when they were talking about how sometimes mentioning who you're voting for, who you want to know more about is very controversial. I just wanted to know your opinions on why that could be, just because sometimes you would wonder why people don't just understand, like, oh, I think this person. They're like, oh, why that? Or sometimes they'll just, what is wrong with you? Are you crazy? Like, so I just wanted to know your thoughts on why that's such a touchy subject.
Well, I think each of you kind of talked about this a little bit, and it's a word that you're very familiar with, trolling, right? I think that your generation, because you put a lot of things out there on social media, right? there's a lot of bullying that takes place, and on this particular election cycle, there's all this negativity coming, and I think people are afraid to speak what they believe because they don't want to be. So my thoughts on that is that as Christians, we need to always reflect Jesus in everything we do. I have a Facebook page, and I have Democratic friends that are very strongly pro-Biden, and I have Republican friends that are very strongly Trump. And they will post their talking points that cause all these trolls to come out of the middle of nowhere, and then there's all this attacks. What I try to do is always bring light into the conversation.
Right.
If you want to stop a bad conversation, say something good about the person they're talking bad about. And I'm not talking another talking point. I mean something that you truly believe that you could defend. You know, whether it's about Biden or whether it's about Trump, just to show people that you're a thinker and that you want to go beyond talking points. So that's kind of what my thoughts are.
And in my experience on social media, I realized there's only two types of people: those who speak to understand and those who speak to just quarrel all day long.
Yeah, and remember, you control your Facebook pages. It's really okay to boot someone off of your Facebook because you're just tired of the fact that they're only causing arguments. You know, these are not the people that you want in your life. I mean, they have a right to their opinion, but your page is your page.
Right.
And there are people watching your page that could be swayed by something negative. So, you know, be mindful that you control your page. And what is your question for me, your next question?
It's kind of off of this topic, but I've always thought about this. Why do you think men mostly dominate politics?
Honestly, I think that it's because men have always been encouraged to be part of politics in history. I mean, going all the way back to the times of ancient Rome and everything, men were always put up in politics. And remember, women had to fight long and hard to get the right to vote, right? And it was the 18th Amendment in 1818 that allowed women to vote for the first time. Or was it not 1818? I'm sorry, it was 1918. Sorry about that, fact checkers, fake news. So 1918, women finally got the right to vote, right? And so when I'm talking to young women, I'm like, there were women who were dying to cast their vote because their husbands was making all these decisions for them. So I think we're just a little behind the time. I also looked and I saw that there are 100 members in the Senate. Only 26 of them are female. This is the United States Senate. The United States House, there's 437 members and only 101 are women. So it's still only at about the 22-23%. So women have to catch up. I do believe it's happening. I think a lot of good women are running for politics now. And I mean, look at the hearing with Amy Coney Barrett. You know, she has been a woman of grace under fire. And I think that young girls looking at her, it's going to make them want to participate more. So I think that that's why we're just kind of behind the times, but I think we're trying to catch up. And I think that if you're a young girl and you're watching this, you have a right to raise your voice. You have a right to run for office. You have a right to try and be president, a doctor. We are not held back by the days of old. And so use your womanly gift and bring it to this community because there's so much yet for you to do.
All right.
Next question.
All right. On the topic of character and social media, if I can just pull up a picture that I saw the other day going through it, and it just reads on here, when you hear a politician say a Christian thing, but then when you see them pass unchristian law, typically when I'm on social media or when I peep in to watch CNN with my father, I'll see two things, and it's usually a strongly worded speech, but then it's followed up by some really not so strongly valued actions. And for an example, the last presidential debate, I think if you guys all went on social media, you saw just the amount of things they poked fun at. I think they made it seem like it was a rap battle. There was just so many things that looked, I guess, in a sense, childish in the way that they conducted themselves, that just pulled down all the strong things that they said. And if you were to speak on that, or the word I wanted to bring up was time-tested character, because it seems like the words that they speak is only as strong as the action that pulls it down just minutes or days later. What do you have to say about that?
Well, again, going back to the idea of social media, I think that we have painted ourselves into a corner with social media because people are posting everything. Here's the food I ate for lunch today. Yeah. Girls are posting pictures of themselves in very interesting bikinis and all this kind of stuff. And it's there forever. Right? Somebody download that picture as quick as you post it. So, you know, looking at this kind of stuff, we have to remember that our character is going to follow us for the rest of our lives.
That's true.
And we can sit here all day and bring up things we don't like about Trump's character. We could sit here all day and bring up things we don't like about Biden. But I think before we do that, we really need to be looking at ourselves first. Because I think the biggest hypocrite in your generation is good about calling out hypocrites. For someone to be up there going, even pastors, to be up there going, you need to live this good life or whatever, and then you find out that they're cheating on their wives. You know, this character issue is bigger than the presidential election. And I think that we just have to own ourselves and work on ourselves. And I think that's going to be what's going to bring the change, because we cannot control what other people do, and we never will. These memes are going to be around forever. I mean, I'm telling you, just some of what we're doing right now, somebody could make a meme, and then there'd be a meme of me doing this, or, you know. So.
And kind of to anchor into the question I've asked earlier, with all this, with all the social media and all the attention going everywhere, like, as you guys know, we'll see something about the presidential debate and then scroll down and we'll see a video of a cat chasing after a toy or something. What would you say is a good, in a sense, clean source to find information on our candidates?
I think that you need to honestly go to their campaign websites, but their campaign websites are going to be full of spin. You have to understand that. But I think that the good thing about the campaign website is it's in writing. And your generation is good about finding something and saying, is this accurate? I don't care what New York Times says or what the Washington Post says or what even the Honolulu Star Advertiser says. What I want to know is what Trump said on his website or what Biden says on his website, because that's what they're going to be doing if they are elected or re-elected to the presidency, right? So go straight to the source. And when somebody tells you, I saw on the news, check it out. Because people are really good right now pulling out something that they saw and then twisting it. And you know, Trump gets a lot of flack for this, but fake news, it exists. It exists. And I think we can stop it by questioning. Let's get to your next question. Do you have one?
Do you feel like politics and just all this stuff is being talked about like unbiasedly in schools and stuff? Do you think it's being taught well to people who have no experience in this at all, like aren't even of age to vote yet?
Well, I definitely can't make a broad stroke to all teachers, because I want to give a shout out to the teachers. They work very hard, and I think that teachers try very hard to bring the right things into the classroom. So shout out to you, teachers. But I've got to admit that I am seeing more and more, and I'm hearing more and more from parents that are saying that the teachers' biases are coming out in the classroom. When you have a teacher that says, okay, I want you to go and do research on President Trump and find out 10 different sources on something bad this man has done. That's not a fair assignment, because they can easily find 10 bad things. A good assignment would be find 10 different sources of something he's done wrong and find 10 sources of something he's done right.
They can probably pull up 10 on Facebook in a matter of seconds.
And question the sources, you know. I think they try their best, but I am seeing more and more, hearing more and more that bias is existing in the class. As we run out of time today, I want to thank you all very much for being honest. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to leave a comment. And if there's comments below, we'll try and maybe get to them at some point in the show. We can't promise to answer everything, but we'll do our very best. So I want to thank you all for your honesty today. And I know that I wasn't able to answer every question probably perfectly. There are people watching this right now that are trolling me and probably arguing with some of the things I say. But I do believe that I sit in the throne room of God and I spend time in prayer. And I want to do everything that the Lord asks me to do to the very best of my ability. And hopefully, you'll do the same thing. Mahalo, everybody.